Welcome to From a Woman to a Leader, a podcast dedicated to discussing the challenges and providing tips for women in tech leadership. Hi, I'm your host, Limor Bergman-Gross, and in each episode, we'll hear from other successful women in tech, sharing their stories, insights, and advice. Join us as we empower each other to reach our full potential in the tech industry. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. And today I have the pleasure speaking with Kim Lebbing about breaking through subconscious barriers. Very, very interesting topic because the subconscious, is very powerful. And before we start, let me share a little bit about Kim. So, Kim is entrepreneurs with Kim Lebbing services to uncover their subconscious limitations because many feel out of alignment with their business or relationship and don't know why or how to shift them. With her intuitive guidance, she empowers them to shift their energy from confusion to clarity, transition to fulfillment, and transform into a new energy so that their businesses and relationships become easier and lighter. Sounds good to me, Kim. I'm ready to kind of do it myself. So hi, Kim. Welcome.
Thank you for having me on today. So excited to be here.
Me too. So excited to have you here. And let's start by maybe you can share your personal journey from a corporate leadership job to becoming a mindset coach and entrepreneur. And how did the challenges you faced early in your career inspire your current path?
Thank you for asking. I love talking. Honestly, I don't talk about how I started in corporate a lot in my work, and I love the story. so
I
I'm
love
glad
stories.
you asked that. Because so I was working in the mortgage industry specifically. So finance, mortgage is the industry that I was in. And, thinking back, even back into high school before I was working and early in my career, I had always been put in leadership roles. And I was in a leadership role in the last corporate job that I had. And because of my mindset, because of the limitations that I had from my past, I never really believed that I deserved it. And because I didn't believe I deserved it, I would always do things self-sabotage. I would be stressed out. I was always out people pleasing like crazy, trying to please, my leaders and, the men above. Always trying to win approval from other people. And it wasn't until, I made the decision to stay home with my kids when we started a family. And it wasn't until I started a business from home and I dove into entrepreneurship that I started seeing how these belief patterns and how these things really were stopping me from getting where I wanted to go. Because ultimately it's ourselves that are getting in the way the most. And if we go way back, how this all started is when I grew up, my dad was verbally abusive. So I had a lot of head trash coming in to my own mindset about, am I good enough? Am I smart enough to do this? A lot of people would call it imposter syndrome. Those were the things that I didn't realize when I was in corporate. They were really the things that were making the job a big, stressful mess for me. And it wasn't until I became an entrepreneur that I really started diving into that. And as I kept diving in, I got more curious about, well, how does this work? How do you overcome this? And I, stumbled into trainings about, specifically in neurolinguistics and absolutely fell in love with it because it worked so quickly. That was the thing. I'm like, I had been in counseling for years and it didn't do for me even close to come do for me the same as this process and these tools that I have now did. And that really sold me. And I knew there were other people, other women, other professionals, business owners, entrepreneurs that really needed that help and needed to and wanted to get out of their own way and wanted a faster way to do it.
Absolutely. And the challenges that you describe are very, very common for
They
women.
are. They are. And people don't talk about it, but it really is. And you're right. As I early on in this work, I thought I was the only one. You think that in the beginning, and then you
Yeah,
start talking to people, and it's really common. And some people have been through much worse, and some people, not as much, but honestly, trauma is trauma. And how you hold it and how you believe it and how it affects you is different for everyone.
absolutely. And sometimes you don't need trauma. Sometimes you need just someone to tell you something and you believe in what they say.
Yes.
If a teacher told you you can or you cannot do something, sometimes you take it for the rest of your lives
Yeah.
and believe
Yeah.
in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say a woman in tech has similar challenges to what you face, and you worked in a very male dominant field in finance.
Totally.
Yeah, it's all men in suit, right? I mean, it's like very intimidating, I would say. At least in tech, it's men in flip flops. A little bit less intimidating, I would say.
I like that.
Yeah, so a woman that feels maybe distress, right? The symptoms. Sometimes you don't know why. Like there is a translation. Symptoms, oh, I'm not worthy. But how does this process start of even realizing that I'm getting in my own way to begin with?
Yeah. You actually triggered something that I thought of that I want to bring up and this is something I went through when I was in corporate. And I didn't know my body was so stressed from the pleasing and the having to feel like I had to do more than everybody else and perform more. I physically was getting sick. So I would say very first, if you're a woman in tech and you're trying to climb the ladder or get ahead, pay attention to your body and what it's telling you because your body and your emotions are very much connected, and it will show up in stress. It will show up in stomach issues. It will show up in skin. I remember I had skin issues. I had all these like autoimmune things that developed when I was working in that higher level corporate job. And I didn't realize it until much later when I was trying to unpack that and get myself healthy, that those things were related to the stress and the things. So I would look at that first above all else, because that is your body is screaming at you, telling you, it's your body's way of telling you that these emotions need to be dealt with, that there's something there.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
that makes total sense. Everything is connected, mind, body, soul. It's all connected. I really believe in that. Yeah, so let's say you're stressed out, you see some symptoms, maybe you're sweating, maybe you're, I don't know, very nervous, anxious, shivering, whatever. I mean, whatever the symptoms that you have. What do you do next?
So this is where you really want to tune into what emotions are there. Because I think, for the most part, what I see with professionals is similar patterns. So I mentioned people pleasing a lot, and that was something that I know. So to answer your question, bring yourself to awareness of what's going on. So notice the body things, but also know like what's the thing that you're doing? What's the thing that's getting in the way? Is it people pleasing? Because that could be something that's holding you back. And it could also be something that happened, like the root cause of it could be something that happened like before the age of 7, like really, really long time ago. It could have been something on the playground. It could have been, all kinds of things. But that really identifying what is it that's going on that you're doing? Because I find people know, like if you ask a people pleaser if they're a people pleaser, they know they're a people pleaser, hands down. They know they have issues with boundaries. They know that they're doing those things. They just don't know how to stop it.
Yeah, and people pleasing is a common problem, especially around women. And I also see that when they get into leadership roles, they want to please everyone, the one that report to them and the one that they report to. And they're in the
Yes.
middle, and then where all this stress start accumulating even further.
Yeah. Yeah. People pleasing is tricky because, and just to like a next step would be to dive into what is it about people pleasing? Like what's the core? What's the real issue? Because a lot of people have it. Men too. I will say I've worked with men too, and they have the same issue. It just shows up a little bit differently. But I think for women, it's even more of an issue because if you bring in some of the traditional roles that we have to or think that we have to do, with, if you're a mother or you're a wife and all those other things, there's just so many things, so many roles that we're trying to fill. And if we have this people pleasing filter, that's what I call it, a subconscious filter that we're seeing through things where we have to try and make everybody happy so that they will like us, so that they will accept us, so that they will love us, then we're basing our decisions, our behaviors, and everything out of that. And if you're trying to get to the next level in your profession, it's actually probably working against you more than for you. So it's probably having the opposite effect.
Absolutely, because you can never please everyone.
No, you can't.
You'll just burn yourself out, stressed out, and be less respected as a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the leaders, whoever's doing the promoting, they're going to see the lack of boundaries. They're going to see the overwhelm. Overwhelm is something I see a lot with people pleasing because they can't say no. And it's a really horrible, vicious cycle because if you say no, even in the home life, and I find it in both. If you say no to one thing, then you're saying, or if you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And generally, especially with women, the thing we're saying no to is our own goals. We're not saying no to, it's not a selfless thing. It's a saying no to us because we don't want to be, we want to be accepted. We want to be loved. And it's all those things that maybe we didn't get, or maybe we just developed this belief that we have to do all these things in order to get that.
So tell us, what do you do with all the people that work with you? How do you help them shift their energy, right? When you shift energy.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah. So the first part of it is really identifying what it is. So and I'll give you an example. So if somebody comes to me with, I'll give you a different example besides people pleasing, since we already talked about that, but we talk about imposter syndrome. They come to me about, okay, I think I have imposter syndrome. I actually had a woman that I worked with that said, I think I have imposter syndrome or fear of success or, something like that going on. And the first part is to really help them see what is it really. Because imposter syndrome, it is a term we throw around a lot and it is a real thing, but there's usually a deeper thing beneath it. So underneath imposter syndrome for her, we discovered was trust. Trust was the real issue. And that's going to be a little bit different for everyone, but something you can do with yourself is ask yourself, okay, what else? What else is this about? How has imposter syndrome shown up? How has it been a problem? And just pull out a journal. I actually have a resource I'll let everybody know that they can use to walk you through this process. But
perfect.
Yeah. But really diving into what is it and how has it been a problem? And that will help distill it down to what's the real core issue. And so for her, trust, if you think about trust, if you're really trying to get ahead in your career and you don't trust other people or yourself, it's really hard to lead a team if you don't trust. It's really hard to even hire people and bring people on if you don't trust. And then there's do you trust yourself? And with her, there were some events from when she was really young, before the age of 7, but there was a bigger event that happened when she was a teen where she made a bad choice and something, I'll say bad, came out of that. And that's where the trust issue came up. So it was something personal, but it was affecting her ability to trust. So that's what I bring those things up, because it can be delicate. And we think that we've worked through things and then they still show up.
Yeah. So you're saying, okay, first digging a little bit deeper and understanding, what is the kind of core issue. And you mentioned also maybe identifying when it happened, what was there that triggered it.
Yes. Yeah.
Which can be something in your corporate or work life experience, or even sooner.
I would say, in my experience, majority of the time, it's something sooner. And it is a pattern that developed way, way back here in the past. But because it's become a pattern, we keep seeing it. And so now it's manifesting into our career. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's say you identified it. And when it happened, now what?
Now the big part is the shifting the energy around it. And it's like reframing. So I'm simplifying this because my process is longer than what we're talking about here. But for you to do it for yourself, reframing it. So what did you learn from the experience? What did you learn? What can you take with you so that you can leave that way back there? Because once you bring that thing that's been under the surface, it's been buried subconsciously, you haven't been aware of it, but now you bring it like right in front of you. Now you're aware. And now you have the opportunity to make another choice, to shift your behavior, shift your responses, because now you're aware. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So basically looking in a way, what have you learned from potentially a bad experience, or what do you choose to take from that? What kind of lessons you choose to take out of that? What maybe something good actually happened?
Yeah. I mean, even the worst situations, you may have learned that you're a strong woman. There's learnings in literally everything. And that's the difference between people that stay stuck in the same spot versus someone that's able to move forward, is they haven't figured out, or their brain won't let them let go of that incident. And then they just stay in this, we all do it. I'll call it a victim energy. We kind of stay in that space and aren't able to move out and beyond it.
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes it's very difficult, especially if it was traumatic experience.
Definitely. I lived in that victim energy for years, and we all do it to some extent, even throughout the day, where you're, blaming the reason why you're late to work on, well, it was the traffic, or, that's really, you're a victim to the traffic then, and you're not owning the fact that you got up late, or, this other thing, that was more your responsibility is the real reason. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. The traffic is always the problem.
Right.
And now that you work from home, you cannot use that excuse anymore.
Right. But we go into that even with our bosses, or there's lots of layers to that, and having some ownership is empowering.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how can you gain awareness of all those kind of beliefs and unconscious feelings or thoughts that you have about yourself?
So gaining awareness about it it's a work in progress. We're like, I don't know if your listeners have ever seen the movie Shrek or if you have, but where he
Yeah.
talks about the onion and he's talking to Donkey and he's like, I'm an
Yeah.
onion. And Shrek and Donkey's like, what, you stink? We really are onions. Like we have so many different layers. So one of the things with me is I've really become almost, I don't want to say addicted, but sort of to this work because there's always something that we can improve on with ourselves. And once you start a personal growth journey, it will pay you back tenfold for whatever you work you do because your relationships get better when your relationships, and that's for me, that's really, really important. How we relate to our personal relationships is
Yeah.
huge, but it also shows up in our business, in our professional life, how we relate to other people. And when we're not offended or we're not trying to people please, and we're trusting other people or trusting ourselves, and we're really tuned in to trusting what our inner guidance is telling us to do or not to do. That's when everything can change. That's when things happen more easily. And with identifying this, it is a process. There's layers to each thing. So there's layers to trust. So maybe you discovered I'm not trusting, with, one area, but then all of a sudden something else will show up in regards to trust that you're like, oh, whoa, I didn't even see that. That was a surprise. I've had that in my own journey with judging myself. That was a big thing. And actually judging how people were going to respond to me because I had to be really careful when I was little. So this was learned from when I was little because my
Mhm.
dad would have these blow ups about things. And I learned really quick that I had to be really careful. I also learned that it was safer to be small and not be seen. I learned there were so many patterns that I picked up in that. And with that, judging how people were going to respond, I had no idea how big that was and how that was showing up because it would show up in my business, even with, doing videos and podcasts and, so many different things. But personally, it was showing up too, even down to making dinner for the family. Like, how am I going to be like, there was always a pause. There was a pause about before I would do something. And it was
Mhm.
like that little 3 or 4 year old Kim was looking out to see if it was safe to move forward. And that was what it was about. And so I think just being aware of how you respond to things and really slowing down and noticing what those are. Because if you're in just the conscious mode that we all are in on a daily basis and never really setting aside time to reflect and really tune in to, what's been good about this week or this day. What is something that I wish I would have responded differently to? Like what was something that got to me? Like what was something that triggered me even? And what is that about? That's when you can really dive in and do some deep work.
Yeah, absolutely. And also thinking about maybe things that you want to do and don't do.
Yes. Yeah, because you might get hurt. That's what our subconscious is telling us. Our subconscious mind is designed to keep us safe. That's ultimately all it wants to do. It just wants to keep us safe. So you may not be asking for that promotion or, you may not be doing the things that you really want to do because you're afraid. And it could be afraid of rejection, afraid of judgment. It could be afraid of, there's so many, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, I mean, there are a lot of times multiple layers that you have to peel before you get to the bottom,
Yes.
right?
And I don't know if we're ever really at the bottom. I haven't hit there
yeah,
yet.
yeah, I know.
In this lifetime, in these bodies, I don't know that we're really there.
That's true. But still, I mean, don't stop, very quickly. Say, oh, I'm not doing that because I am. So ask, okay, why? And what will try to be a little bit more curious and ask yourself some tough questions.
Yeah. Yeah. Curiosity is so helpful in this work. Like just getting curious about, that was interesting that I did that.
Right.
That was interesting that I said that.
Yeah.
And coming from it, not from a don't beat yourself up kind of place, but just curious, be gentle on yourself. Don't beat yourself up because that doesn't help either.
We've all been there, unfortunately, and women do that very well for themselves.
Yeah, I agree. We do. And it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to, and we can relearn how to be. Even if you've had the roughest of growing up and circumstances, you can relearn it. And even if you haven't, there's people that do this work, whether they've had, past trauma or not. Everyone responds differently.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tell our audience a little bit about your work with entrepreneurs and how can they find more about you?
Yeah. So, well, as you know now, I work a lot. I believe in transformation first. So, it's not for the lighthearted, the work that I do. So we dig in and we go deep. And we really, work on those things that have been, maybe lingering for a really, really long time. I'm also gentle.
And you're also very nice.
Thank you. So working with me is a journey, but it's also a big commitment. So it's really a commitment to yourself more than anything else. That, it may not be pretty and easy, but on the other side of it, it's beautiful. And things get so much better.
Wonderful.
And so I want to, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go
I was going to say, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the resource I have for everyone, because it really is helpful. And if you connect with me, you can go to my website, Kimberly Lebbing, Lebbing. So Kimberly, Kimberly, Lebbing.com. And I have a resource called Unlocking Your Authentic Self. And it's 3 steps to discover those hidden limitations so that you can move into your highest potential. So it's the steps that I described here, but it's in a nice format where you can journal and really print it out and think about it. And we can, I'm assuming, add the link to that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the direct link, so they don't have to go through my website too. The direct link so they can download it.
Absolutely. We will add the direct link. That would be great. And how can people reach out to you? So you mentioned your website. Anything else?
Social media. I am all over on LinkedIn, on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm in all the places. And I put out a lot of content, clips, tips of, lots of videos and things. They can sign up for my email list, all kinds of ways to connect with me. And I'm on socials. You'll plug in Kimberly Lebbing.
Yes, and we'll put all the links, so don't worry. Kim, thank you so much for being here today. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
It has been a pleasure for me as well. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you for listening to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. This is your host, Limor Bergman-Gross, and I want to encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Limor Bergman, and let me know, what do you think about the episodes? Feel free also to comment on Apple Podcasts And tell me, what do you want me to talk about? Which guests do you want me to bring? I really appreciate that, and have a wonderful day.